Before getting into the main saga of this part, I briefly want to talk about Goku and Chi-Chi's training over the last 3 years. I was torn on whether they should train with Fortune Teller Baba and, by extension, warriors from Otherworld, or they should run around the world again. So I asked people in my Discord server about it and got the opinion of someone in the comments on the last video. Most of them said to go with the option of them training with Fortune Teller Baba. That's what I'm going to do. Originally, I was going to make this part all about her training and save the Tien Shinhan saga for the next part, but I changed my mind. I mainly did this because there isn't a lot I can go into detail with about Fortune Teller Baba's training with how I plan for her to train them. For her training, while she might teach them the basics of magic, I don't see Goku and Chi-Chi focusing on that too much. They'd likely be more invested in the martial arts part of things in this timeline, so their major training under her would involve her bringing various fighters back from Otherworld for them to train with, which, this is the main reason I decided not to make this a full part, since we don't know many fighters in Otherworld that they could train with. Anyway, the main fighter I had in mind for them to train with was Master Mutaito. Training with him can also overlap with Baba's magic training, as on the Dragon Ball Wiki. It lists the evil containment wave as a magic technique. I never really thought about that, but it makes sense that it uses magic. After all, it has to use the seal to work, and it was able to seal away someone like Zamasu, who typically could use the Kai to teleport anywhere. I don't think a basic ki technique would have been able to do that, so it makes sense to me that the evil containment wave is a magic technique instead. In the original series, it took Tien a day to learn this technique. While Goku and Chi-Chi are weaker than him as of right now, they have 3 years to practice it until the next World Martial Arts tournament, so by the time of that tournament, they likely would have it mastered. Also, even with training with Baba, I don't think they'd stay with her for the entire 3 years. There likely wouldn't be enough worthwhile fighters to bring back from Otherworld for them to train with, since Baba can only bring each person back for a day. Basically, once they finished training with all the people she brought back from Otherworld, they'd probably go on to running around the world. Anyway, it's hard to guess how long they would be training under Fortune Teller Baba for, but I'd estimate about 6 months. This way, they can just learn the basics of magic and learn techniques from fighters from Otherworld. For the other 2.5 years, they would be running around the world to train, just like they did once before. So, their training kind of ends up being a combination of the two options that I was torn between earlier. As a side note, Goku might also work on trying to control the Great Ape form like Bardock suggested him to. They would probably make sure to do this somewhere deserted and when Chi-Chi isn't in the immediate vicinity so that she isn't put into danger. Like how Yajirobe cut off Vegeta's tail even though he was far stronger than Yajirobe, he could plan to have Chi-Chi nearby as a backup plan to cut off his tail. This way, she could stop him if he went on a rampage that would harm the planet or anything like that. If he would have complete control over his Great Ape form by the end of their training is hard to say, but he at least has a better handle on it by the time of the next tournament. 3 years after the last tournament have now passed, so it's time for the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament. With Krillin and Bulma having been running around the world for the past 3 years, they wouldn't arrive at the tournament grounds by plane like Roshi did. Roshi is likely the first one to arrive in this timeline, since he was the only one to take the plane. After entering himself in the tournament under the name Jackie Chun, he goes on to wait for the others to arrive. Though when Master Shen confronts him, along with Tien, Shinhan, and Shatsu, none of his students are there to get immediately involved in their rivalry. Mercenary Tao is also likely there alongside Shen, as he wasn't seemingly killed in this timeline. Krillin and Bulma would likely be the first ones to arrive, as they probably would have left earlier so they didn't risk being late like Goku almost was. As usual, Goku and Chi-Chi would arrive at the tournament grounds with about a minute to spare. All of them would go to sign up for the tournament, minus Bulma. Like I mentioned in previous parts, even though Bulma has trained in this timeline, she is more interested in going on adventures than she is in fighting. She only participated in the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament since it was part of Roshi's training. Once they are all signed up, they would spend the time before the preliminaries catching up with each other. Like I hinted at before, Krillin and Bulma might have actually gotten into a romantic relationship together by this time. After all, Krillin and Bulma would both be in their late teens at this point. Being essentially alone together for the last 3 years also would have given time for something like that to form in between them. I also don't see Krillin not shooting his shot when he had the chance, and Bulma still had the interest in finding the perfect boyfriend. Perhaps she just thinks the perfect guy for her in this timeline is Krillin. Their relationship wouldn't have the same issues that hers with Yamcha eventually did, after all, as I don't see Krillin cheating on her. Now, as for Goku and Chi-Chi, I could see them being in a similar boat in this timeline when it comes to relationships, especially after getting Bardock's blessing to pursue a relationship with his son. I think that would have just motivated her even more. Even Goku might develop an interest in her on his own, since he has been spending a lot of time with her over the last 6 years. By the time of this tournament, it's it's likely that they would have started dating as well. Anyway, back to talking about the tournament, since the preliminaries would be about to begin. Normally when I've been doing these tournaments, I've been expanding the tournament by one round to have 16 fighters. There's no need for me to do that in this tournament, though. With the moon not having been destroyed by Jackie Chun in this timeline, since Goku didn't turn into a Great Ape in the last tournament, Man-Wolf wouldn't be a participant in this tournament. He said that he only participated in this tournament to get revenge on Jackie Chun. Also, with the heroes having never interacted with Yamcha, he also wouldn't be here in this tournament. So, there are 2 empty slots in the tournament that could be filled by Chi-Chi and other fighters from their preliminaries. I'd probably make King Chappa the other fighter that goes on to the final tournament, since he was the only fighter who normally didn't make it through these preliminaries that we know anything about. Once the preliminaries finally begin, there'd still be a lot of talk when Jackie Chun enters the ring. Since he was the winner of the last 2 tournaments in this timeline, the preliminaries basically go the same way they always do, minus Goku fighting King Chappa in the preliminaries, so I have him going on to the main tournament in this timeline. Normally, in the manga, Tien got into a small dispute with Yamcha, but that obviously wouldn't happen in this timeline. This little dispute might happen with Chi-Chi in this timeline instead, as even though she has her emotions under control, she can still be a bit feisty. As usual, Tien still has Shatsu rig the drawing of the lots for their placement in the tournament bracket, without Man-Wolf being there. King Chappa is put against Jackie Chun instead, but without Tien having a dispute with Yamcha, he has Shatsu put it so that his match is against Chi-Chi. This means that the matches of the quarterfinals are as follows. Match 1 is Chi-Chi vs Tien, Match 2 is King Chappa vs Jackie Chun, Match 3 is Krillin vs Shatsu, and Match 4 is Goku vs Pomput. Before getting into the matches of the tournament, I briefly want to discuss how strong the heroes would be at this point. For Goku and Chi-Chi, when Goku ran around the world in our timeline, his power level went from 126 to 180. That's about a 1.42 times boost, but I rounded it up to a 1.5 times boost since they also trained with Baba and fighters from other worlds in this timeline. So, his power level would go from 199 to 299. As for Chi-Chi, if she got that same boost, her power level would go from 172 to 258. Then as for Krillin and Bulma, normally Krillin's power level went from 22 to 113 between the 21st and 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament, which is about a 5.13 times boost. If he got that same boost in this timeline, his power level goes from 48 to 247. With Bulma, I gave her half of that boost. She would be more focused on exploring the world instead of training like Krillin is, so her power level would go from 55 to 141. Something to briefly mention is that Tien and Shatsu would likely be slightly stronger in this timeline as well. I mentioned in the last part that Goku and Chi-Chi only knocked out Mercenary Tao. Since he wasn't seemingly killed, he got to train Tien and Shatsu for longer. This likely wouldn't make them extremely stronger, but it would have a slight effect on their power level. Normally during this saga, Tien had a power level of 180 and Shatsu's power level was 60. I made Tien's power in this timeline 200 and I made Shatsu's 67. With Tao known to be alive by them in this timeline. This also makes the fights during this tournament more about the rivalry between the Turtle School and the Crane School instead of it being about revenge. Now, we can finally get into the matches, with the first match being between Chi-Chi and Tien. With the power levels I mentioned earlier, this would put Chi-Chi far above Tien. Instead of this being a fight where she isn't doing much to him like Yamcha was, it would be reversed. Tien would still get hits on her, but they wouldn't really be doing anything to her. Even if he tries to use some of the techniques Mercenary Tao got to teach him in this timeline, she would be able to block or dodge them from having seen those techniques before. Like he did in the fight against Goku. He might try using things like the Four Witches technique, but it'd be to no avail. Normally, Tien would have Shatsu secretly intervene in the fight when Tien seemed to be losing. Depending on what magic they've learned from Fortune Teller Baba, they might have learned things that can help resist against magic being used on them, such as Shatsu's telekinesis. So even that might not work to try and give Tien the edge. This essentially means that their fight would soon end with him being effortlessly knocked out of the ring. Even with Chi-Chi having that feisty side, as a child, she was still shown to be sweet and kind, but she goes to congratulate him for the good fight and talk to him after the match. He treats him with kindness instead of being arrogant or mocking. This would catch Tien off guard, since he was used to how Tao and Shen seemed to believe that the weak deserved to be scorned. Instead of it being Roshi the first plant the seeds of doubt into his mind, it would be Chi-Chi in this timeline. It doesn't mean that he wouldn't have a similar talk with Roshi as he normally does, as I could see Roshi going to approach him after the fight as well. Roshi would probably notice the doubt that started to form in his mind after his fight with Chi-Chi. After all, not only was the Turtle School not completely like he was taught, but they were actually kind to him. So, Roshi might still have a talk with him where he mentions that Tien just isn't cut out to be evil. Before Tien could press him more, Jackie Chun would be called to the ring, so Roshi would give an excuse like having to go to the bathroom and hurry off. The next match is between King Chappa and Jackie Chun, so once Roshi finally got into disguise and arrived at the ring, this fight would begin. It would be like a rematch of the 20th World Martial Arts Tournament, as they fought in the championship match back then. Even with the estimated power level of 140 that I came up with for King Chappa, he wouldn't stand a chance against Jackie Chun in his full power, so that match would go exactly the same as back then. He wouldn't be able to land a hit on Jackie Chun, and he would be easily knocked out of the ring. There isn't too much of a reason to go into detail in the third match between Krillin and Shotsu. The main difference is that it would be a far easier fight for Krillin, since he is far stronger than normal in this timeline, while Shotsu is only slightly stronger than normal. Ken might try to command Tien to secretly intervene in their fight like he did with Shotsu, but with the seeds of doubt already planted in his mind, he might refuse. And Shen and Tao trying to threaten to kill him for his disobedience like he did with Shotsu, Roshi would still intervene by using a Kamehameha to send them both flying. Regardless, the fight between Krillin and Shotsu still ends with him distracting Shotsu with math problems. This way, he's still too distracted to use his telekinesis and is knocked out of the ring. There isn't any reason to go into a lot of detail about the fourth match between Goku and Palmput either, as Goku would still defeat him in one hit. Once that fight is over, this brings us to the semi-final round, with the first match of it being Chi-Chi versus Jackie Chun, and the second match of it is the same as it was in the manga, which was Krillin versus Goku. When Chi-Chi and Jackie Chun enter the ring, she might comment on how she has been waiting for the chance to face him again since she lost to him 2 tournaments ago, but she also would be respectful about it, as she would likely mention how she took his advice about getting her temper under control into consideration. When he tells her to show him how far she's come, the fight starts off with them going blow for blow at first. He might hold his own through technique and strategy at first, but Chi-Chi far outclasses his power level of 180 at this point, so most of his techniques and attacks would be resisted or countered by her. He'd likely acknowledge to himself that he can't win this fight, as he's been surpassed in strength. Instead of dragging out this fight, he'd test her with one last technique, the Kamehameha shot at his full power. Even then, he'd be able to overpower it with her own. After this, like he did with Tien, he would jump out of the ring. He isn't forfeiting because he's tired, though. He forfeited because he realized the next generation is turning out fine, and that his students won't just become slackers by winning this tournament like he feared they would in previous tournaments. He'd likely tell her something about being proud of her, and to go show the world what kind of warrior she has become. Him forfeiting would confuse her at first, but she'd likely realize it was a gesture of respect, so she'd likely bow deeply and thank him, though him forfeiting wouldn't just be a shock to her, but to the tournament announcer and the crowd as well, since he was the 2-time reigning champion at this point. Anyway, this brings us to the next match between Krillin and Goku. With them both being massively stronger in this timeline, their fight likely goes the same that it normally did, since the gap in strength between them is about the same. About the only difference is that Krillin wouldn't try to exploit his tail as a weakness, since by the time Krillin met him, that weakness was already overcome. Regardless, their fight still ends with Goku going fast enough to seemingly vanish, as he then knocks Krillin out of the ring. Now that that fight is over, it brings us to the final match, which is between Chi-Chi and Goku. Once they enter the ring, she might briefly tease him not to go easy on her just because they're dating, though he would say something along the lines of that he wouldn't dream of it, since he wants to see how strong she is now. He'd start this match off strong, possibly catching him off guard with her speed or precision, though she has also been training alongside him for years to this point, so she'd likely be able to better predict his moves than any other previous opponent. However, he'd likely be able to predict her moves like that as well. In terms of raw power, he has the edge, but she could hold her own at first by using her finesse to counter some of his moves, potentially with a few well-placed ki blasts. After this, they finally decide to go all out. She briefly catches him in a tight spot with a flurry of rapid strikes. He narrowly escapes this barrage of attacks, but he isn't unscathed from it. Just like how Roshi used a Kamehameha at the end of his fight against Chi-Chi, Goku might try the same thing. With them being close in power, this would be a nail-biter, as they get into a beam struggle. Though, with him having the slight advantage in power, she is eventually knocked just out of the ring. Once he is declared the winner, he would offer her a hand to help her up, as he also congratulates her on the good fight. While they stand hand in hand in the ring, the crowd erupts in cheers. Regardless, now that the tournament is over, they would all plan to go out to dinner to celebrate after Roshi suggested it. He would also invite Tien and Shotsu to come along, and they'd likely agree to it since the seeds of doubt had started to be placed into their minds. Without Goku having forgotten anything behind, since he doesn't carry the 4-star Dragon Ball in this timeline, no one has to go and retrieve it for him, so they would all go to dinner together without anything interrupting them, at least for now.